And before I get to the book, like Zoe mentioned, this month is Black History Month in America. I pay tribute to the past and present, all those individuals who have created, recorded, and added their voices to enrich the African-American history, not only from in February, but from January to December. And every year, year in, year out. I also pay tribute to other individuals who do the same to the history of people of African descent. And I'm so glad, and I have a lot of gratitude that I stand in front of you today, adding my tiny voice from another tiny corner of the world. It's an honor. So that leads us to why I wrote the Colonized and the Scramble for Africa. The simple reason is I wanted to tell stories about peasants who lived and worked on British colonial farms in Kenya. Stories which would otherwise never be told. And me having been one of those peasants, I felt I'm the only person qualified to tell my story and my experiences. So that's one reason. And there is another reason. The books I've read and I've come across that were written in that era, they were all written by foreigners. They wrote about their exploits, or about hunting, or about mythical characters, like is it called turban? What are, you know the one I mean, swinging from trees. Those are the kind of books they wrote. Or they wrote about themselves.
Tarzan.
Oh, Tarzan, there you go. Yeah, Tarzan, those kind of stories. Otherwise, they wrote about themselves and their lives. And Africans were just footnotes, if they mentioned them at all. Even later, when books were written by Africans, mainly from the 60s, very good books, those books were written by men. And these men didn't grow on the farm. So they still didn't have the feel of how it is to live on a farm. The only book I remember I read and it spoke to me is by a lady called Dr. Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. But Dr. Maathai came to the farm when she was a small child. And lucky for her, she left the farm when she was 7 years old. So even in her book, she's a little nostalgic about farm life, the little she mentions. But the book, at least, yeah, it was maybe because it was a woman. And as you will see later, we came from the same tribe. So there were some similarities. Other than that, nobody wrote about peasants. And why not? Because peasants didn't go to school. There were no schools to go to. The few boys who went to school walked for miles to go to a one-room school where they went from grade 1 to grade 4. That's the only, the standard of education the farmers needed. One was able to read the Bible. Number 2, You could fill in ledger how much milk is being sold, or how many bags of coffee, or bags of wheat, that kind of thing. They didn't need more education. But again, how many people did they need to do that? Maybe 1, 2, and the other ones, you didn't need to go to school. My oldest brother went to such a school. At 11 years old, he used to walk about 5 to 6 miles over a mountain range. And when he did his, because, okay, maybe I back up, those schools at grade 4, there are some people who got lucky. They did what was called common entrance exam. And if they passed at all, they went to boarding schools in grade 5, 100 or so miles away from home. There were a few African schools set aside for those kind of children. So when my brother did his common entrance, only 2 boys passed. And that was fine because that was the norm, or maybe 1. It was my brother and another boy. The rest, the few repeated, the other ones were aged out, and they joined the parents in the fields. And that was the cycle, day in, day out. And maybe that took about 60 years of that kind of cycle. And you have noticed I haven't mentioned girls, because girls did not go to school. No, they didn't. But I'm one of the lucky, I don't know whether I need to use the word luck. Girls started going to school in my generation. And that is just because there were people called the Mau Mau freedom fighters. They wreaked havoc in Kenya. They took up arms, they went into the forest and started a war against the British. So because of that turmoil, people were gathered and concentrated, like you have there, they used to call them native reserves. So people were collected all over the country and put in reserves, like Native American reservations here. The ones on the farm like us, they were screened. Our parents were going at night, they get screened so that they can find the clean ones, because the farms had to run. People had to eat and exports had to be exported. So they had to remain people on the farms, of course. But they were screened to make sure they were clean. And then they had to sign what was called a loyalty agreement, that no matter what happened to the war, they were going to defend the farm. That's how people like us remained on the farm. Otherwise, the rest were all taken to camps. The ones who are found to have an affiliation with the Mau Mau were taken to concentration camps, or they called detention camps. The other ones were taken to those native reserves. So for us who remained on the farm, what were they going to do? Put us in villages. We didn't get scot-free. So we were put in secured villages. But then what do you do when you have people in villages with all these little children loitering around? The farmers around got together. We need to build them a school, grade 1 to 4. That's how I got a chance to go to school. And it was a 3-room school of mud and thatch. We shared grade 1 and 2, 1 room, and 3 and 4 the other rooms. I was 10 years and 3 months old. just on time. So I got in school, but I wasn't the oldest. There were a few younger than me. Most were around my age. And another group were about early teens or teenagers. And of course, they started dropping out of school. And it went on. Boys dropped out of school too, for various reasons. Sometimes parents didn't have the money to pay, because throughout we paid for tuition in Kenya. So they dropped out of school. By grade 5, I think we are about 4 girls in school, in class. And then in January of my entering grade 6, I looked around, and my classmates, the 2 or 3 remaining, were not there. I thought they were late, but they weren't. I went through middle school, the only girl among 25 or 30 boys. So that's how we could not write our books. There was no anybody to write our stories. So the point was why I wrote the book. If I didn't write my stories or my experiences, I would die with them, just like the way my parents and my community, they died with most of their stories. And that's why I wrote The Colonized and The Scramble for Africa. The other item, I think, was the setting. And we have a map of Africa. Just give us a minute. So this is the setting. This is the map of Africa, and I don't know, let's see. Yes, this is the map of Africa, and you can see this little thing is Kenya. And of course, this is the representation. So what happened is in 1884, European powers met in Berlin, Germany. The Germans, the French, the British, the Italians, the Dutch, and others. And they chopped up Africa among themselves into what they termed the sphere of influence. This country here, Kenya, went to the British. Now it was left to each one of them to decide how to get control, to conquer and control their sphere of influence. Whatever method they used, it was up to them. Some were very cruel, they came differently. Some came through explorers or through missionaries, and then from then on, but it never worked that smoothly. So I think we can go to the next map. Oh, there's something, let's go back a little. There's something I want to say about this. Yes, I talked about the people being taken from all over the country. This is where they were being taken to. It's used to be called Central Province. This is the home of people called the Kikuyu people. They are called, we call it Agikuyu, but, and they speak the language of Gikuyu, but that's a mouthful. They are called Kikuyu in Kiswahili. So they were being taken from all over the country and being dumped in this Central Province, which is made up of 3 counties. I think, yes, we can go to the next one. So after everything went down, so this is the Africa with all the boundaries. Africa is it's a continent made of 54 sovereign countries, according to the United Nations. It has a population of 1.3 billion people and counting. You can still see this is Kenya. Again, that went to the British. And just to orient yourself, this is the Mediterranean Sea with the Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt around there. This is the Red Sea that divides Middle East and Africa. And of course, you come to the Indian Ocean between the subcontinent of India and Africa, and come down to the South Africa down here. And that's where the ocean connects, Indian Ocean connects with the Atlantic Ocean. That comes all the way to the east coast of United States. So this is Kenya, and this is where now, that's where the setting of the book is. We can go to the next map. Now this is Kenya. Again, the county is concentrated here. And the Kenya is slightly smaller than Texas. It has a population of 55 million people. And that doesn't include people in the diaspora, people like me who go to and fro, or who go quite often. It has 42 distinct tribes. I'm from a tribe called the Kikuyu. Yeah, and we all speak different languages, although with the younger generation, it's changing. But during my time, we all spoke mainly our languages. And it borders Ethiopia at the top. On the eastern side, is it eastern? Yes, this is eastern side. Somalia, and you have the Indian Ocean here. Then they have the Tanzania and Lake Victoria, which straddles three countries, Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya. Kenya has got a very small part, although on the surface it's not small. And here you have Uganda and South Sudan. Sometimes I see in United States, we get bent out of shape because of one border. You can imagine the kind of issues Kenya has with all these borders open. But anyhow, this is the setting of our book. Is there anything else I want to say about? I think that's about it. Maybe we will have a question during Q&A. Yeah, then we can go to the next one. Now, this is an old map, although, and remember the county, which was known as Central Province. This is where those counties are. That was the Mau Mau. They used to call it the black spot, the stronghold. And the European farms, or British farms rather, were out here. That's where we lived. Part of my family were in the thick of it. But my father, like others, signed the loyalty agreement. So we were in the periphery. And this mayhem here, thousands of people died, but that's why I was able to go to school. I think we can go to the book now. And now, this is the book I'm going on and on and on about. The Colonized and the Scramble for Africa. I think the only thing I can say about it is that it's the first book of a series. And it's interesting how they make me feel emotional because there are some things I'm writing that I never thought I'll write. Yeah, the others, I don't know how many there are going to be, but this one covers from 1884 to 1956. And the 84 is when the European powers chopped up Africa. And what happens is that I take the first two, and maybe we can remove the book. I'll be able to remember that, so that I can see the people. Reggie, are you there? Yes. So it covers those up to 84, when the African continent was chopped into bits and pieces. And then it will come to 1956, and where the next book is going to take off. Now, what else can I say about this? I was going to say what the book is about. I think the images have already shown you what the book is about, but mainly it's about how the British came to Kenya, and they conquered the country, and they ruled the country, and how they did it, community by community, until they took the whole country. And of course, there were people who helped them. There were people who always roll over, and they helped them. But that one only covers, that's what I started the book with. And there are only 2 chapters, because I want to orient, or rather to show the readers why people who owned land previously ended up on colonial farms without anything. From then, that's all I do for those 2 chapters. From then on, then I just tell about my family stories and the communities, my Kikuyu community stories. Thank you.